Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Wisdom Chat. And my wonderful guest today is Sarah Williams, who runs Debt Camel, which provides you with all sorts of information to do with money. And you write a blog, don't you, Sarah, as well?
Yes, I've got a blog which is called debtcamel.co.uk, where I write about everything to do with debt in the United Kingdom and credit ratings.
Brilliant. And you've got Instagram and Twitter accounts as well at Debt Camel. So, Sarah, thank you very much for joining us today. I know, you're a former debt advisor with 20 years experience there. There's an awful lot of knowledge and experience that you carry. And I can vouch for that in terms of the many meetings I've been in where I've listened to you and you've talked us through various things, and it's been great. Our listeners at this moment in time clearly are very much aware of the rising cost of living, and there's a lot of information being coming out this week, apart from the sadness of the Queen and her burial on Monday. But there's other information being coming out, particularly to do with where people are at now and perhaps what they're thinking about in the future. And one thing that strikes me is oftentimes, even though the information has been given by government about helps and supports, people are still asking the question, but what does this mean for me? What are the kind of things that you're seeing at the moment, Sarah, that really are impacting our society right now?
So, well, the key thing everyone this year is inflation, rising prices of just about everything. But probably top of most people's minds are the household bills that are going up, particularly the energy bills. If you've got a mortgage, you may be seeing your mortgage rates going up because of interest rates going up. Your rent may be going up. Certainly, if you move house, you may have a higher rent when you move. And then in addition to that, all the essential things we have to buy. So food, everybody has to buy food. And if you've got a car, petrol prices. So people are hit incredibly differently depending on whether they've got a fixed rate on their mortgage for a few years. They're insulated from that problem. If they don't have a car, they don't need to worry about the petrol prices. But somebody who's got a car that they need for a 30-minute commute every day is paying an astonishing amount more now than they were at the start of the year. And they could never have predicted that. So we're in a position now where the government is trying to give help in some situations. It's not always very well targeted at the people who need it the most. But the problem is the help is coming out in sometimes unclear ways. Though Martin Lewis is doing a great job of explaining the energy help that's being offered to everybody. But the whole situation is changing anyway because the prices keep going up. So the government is in a sense trying to play catch up, and the prices carry on going up. And this can make a very difficult situation for anybody to kind of see the whole picture of their own finances, where it's all sort of moving.
I know one of the things that was mentioned yesterday, and this was for businesses, was the support that they would get with their rising energy costs. But the thing that really came out was, as a business, and I have a business, is the ability to plan ahead and not just a few months ahead. So their support's going to be for 6 months, but they would plan for 12 months. And it's the inability to be able to plan. And that's what I found for myself when I look at how this affects me as a household. I get the information and they talk about averages. So the average household energy bill going up no more than £2,500 per annum. Yet we're not all in average households. And so then you look at the price per kilowatt and then the standing charge. And after a while, I'm probably not the only one, but I think So what
Too
is
many
it really going
numbers.
to cost me? Yeah.
Yeah, too many. So after you've seen so many numbers, you just kind of tune out in a way.
Yeah.
And you can also kind of get, so when they said, oh, the average household energy bill will only be going up to 2,500, and that's massively less than it would have been if the previous price cap had happened at the start of October, and then that would have gone up again in January next year.
Yeah.
So obviously what they've done is better, but it still means that most people are paying way more than twice as much as they were paying for their energy this time at the start of 2022.
Yeah.
And so, obviously businesses formally plan for, a year, 2-year plans, but most households have equally got in their mind. They may not have written it out formally on a bit of paper, but they kind of knew what they wanted to do this year.
Yeah.
They wanted a summer holiday in the summer. They wanted to clear the car loan, say. Then they wanted to refix the mortgage or save up for a deposit or something. So most households have got a feeling for what they want to do during the year.
Yeah.
Back in January, good time always to be sort of, rethink. It's good to have a regular review of your finances.
Yeah.
And that's all gone out of the window completely. So, what you used to be able to manage your grocery shop at £70 a week or £120 a week or whatever, depending how many in your family. And now every time you go to the shops, it's an extra £5 a week.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it feels like we're on sort of shifting sands. And
Yeah.
you can get, the energy prices in particular, you might think, oh, that's a big relief, but there are literally millions of people in this country that can't afford what the prices went up to in April.
Yeah.
And they are still going up again from there.
Yeah.
So Citizens Advice has a lot of people contacting it for emergency support,
Right.
if they can't put money into a prepayment meter.
Yeah.
Now, always, this is very, very seasonal. Citizens Advice, they can tell, they've got great statistics for what is happening in the last month, and they can measure that against what has happened last year. And so what they can see is they normally get contacts about people not being able to put money onto their prepayment meter for the gas and the electric in sort of December to March. Those are the big peak periods. But instead, they were getting in July this year, in the hottest summer we've ever had, more people contacting them than they would normally have had in a winter month.
Yeah.
So that's people who can't cope already before we get round to it being cold and having to have the heating on all the time.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very divided country. Some people are really seriously, they can't see how they can heat the house, pay the rent and feed the children. Other people are just in the, I don't quite know how I'm going to pay all my credit card bills, because that money's being eaten up on necessities. And there are 20% of the population is well off and has got savings, and they may wince at their energy bills, but they can pay them without too much problem. So it's a very, very different situation, and we don't talk about it very much. So
no,
you see sort of horror stories sometimes in the newspapers, and you think, well, I'm not as bad as that. But how bad is your situation? It's not always clear.
Yeah, that's one of my things with regards to what I try and encourage people to do is to think past the fears that they have about talking about their monies. I was talking to a gentleman a while ago, and we were talking about why people wait so long when they may well be encountering some challenges around their finances. And it often is because of the fear that they hold. Right now, I was just thinking as you were talking, you mentioned fuel prices on the forecourt for cars. And we've all seen them go up, and we've all seen them start to come down. And I probably for the first time found myself thinking more about the journeys I take and and asking myself a question: do I really need to do this journey? Can I do this journey a bit cheaper? Questions perhaps I would have just assumed, oh, I'm fine, and I would have just done the journey. And the other thing, when you talked about shifting sands, I just thought about even the news about inflation and the fact that the inflation had gone up, I think around 10.1%, something like that, and then it dropped back down to 9.9%, and people might be forgiven for thinking they've seen the fuel prices come down on the forecourt, but nowhere near enough, and inflation coming down. Are we okay? Are we going in the right direction? You know,
Yeah.
but
Yes,
then
that was a tiny drop, wasn't it?
yeah,
So
it was.
I think
It was.
a lot of also it's important to realise that's a drop in the inflation rate. It doesn't mean prices have dropped. It just means they're not going up quite as fast.
Yeah.
But really, the only significant drop in the when they calculated the Office of National Statistics, when it calculates those inflation numbers, the only significant drop was on the forecourt petrol and diesel prices. Everything else was going up more. So the inflation for food was at 12.7% or something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So that's carrying on getting worse. So if you don't have a car, you're not helped at all by the fact that petrol prices drops a bit. And even if you do have a car, again, it's a bit divided because petrol prices have come down a lot more than diesel prices have.
Yeah.
And diesel prices also went up a lot more at the start. So if you happen to drive a diesel car, you are a lot worse off than if you have a petrol car. So the big overall headline numbers don't really often reflect what's happening to you and your situation. So it's good to be able to step back and try to say, can I get a quick summary of my situation? What do you do by budgeting? Do you just have a sort of gut feel? Well, I spend roughly this much on food. Do you actually write it down? If you've never tried writing it down, have a go writing it down for a month, and then at the end of the month, just look at what you actually spent. And that'll perhaps give you more of a feel for what's going on.
That's a really good point, Sarah, because it's interesting. We're asking a whole range of people about what they thought about budgeting, and there was one person who responded with, "Oh, budgeting doesn't suit me," as though they were talking about a fashion item. But generally speaking, less than 50% of the working population have any kind of plan. And when I've talked to some people, they said, "Oh yeah, I plan. I get all my receipts together and tot up how much I spent at the end of the month." And so there's lots of different approaches, and you look at it and think that isn't planning though, because planning is looking ahead. And
well, it's better than doing nothing, because at least if you're doing that, at least you're getting a feel for what's changing and how much more expensive this month was than the previous month.
That's true.
The ideal is really to sort of say, we're in sort of mid-September at the moment. So if you think in calendar months, obviously it depends when you get paid. So you might be starting to think about an October budget. You've got the sort of regular household bills, that are coming through, and you can probably make a good guess as to what those are. And then you've got the sort of routine weekly spends on food and toiletries and transport and petrol or bus pass. Make a good guess at those. Then think, what else is happening in October? So are you planning a Halloween party? Is it your mother's birthday party and you're going to go and see her for the week? Think what unusual is happening this month. So the kids are on holiday perhaps for a week or 2 weeks at the end of it. Will you allow extra for that? So work out what's unusual about this month, and then also think, is there anything happening in this month, such as, does your car insurance come up for renewal? So you get a list of things which you think may happen in October, and what you absolutely have to do this year of all years is, when you're adding all these you need to have a buffer at the bottom.
Yeah.
Depends
Yeah.
how big your family is, and what sort of expenditure there is. But you need to have £20 or £50 unallocated, because
Yeah.
something's going to crop up during that month.
Yeah.
Particularly if you haven't budgeted. If you budgeted routinely for a long while, you may be better at it. But
Yeah.
nobody gets it right the first month. Put a buffer in, see what it gets used for, and then at the end of the month, you'll have a much better feel for what's going on.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a really good point. And I like what you said about, even at the end of the month, even though we kind of sort of laugh about, people's idea of planning, but still being able to look at your spending patterns, because oftentimes I find people spend on things and they don't realize how much they're actually spending. So take, for example, not that lots of people are going to the office these days, but for those who still are, they might pick up a coffee on the way. And, little things, they do mount up. And when you look at the end of the month and you can think, wow, did I spend that much on those particular items? And I often say to people, if there are things that you do on a regular basis, consider, could I postpone it? Because even postponing it by an extra week, like, people who go for a regular haircut, I'm certainly not one of those people. but people who do, then could they ask themselves the question, could I postpone it for a week? And it's amazing how much people might save by doing things like that. Can I avoid it?
Right. Yeah. Or do it less often. So,
yes. Yeah.
If you got into a habit of having 2 or 3 takeaways a week, can you reduce it down to 1 a week? If you cut it out altogether, that's when people say budgeting doesn't suit me, because it's like going on a really restrictive diet. So you say, I'm going to try and, I'm going to exist on 800 calories a day and only eat grapefruits or something like that. Grapefruits and oatcakes or something daft. You can't live like that. You can manage it for a week, but you can't manage it for a month. So your budget has to include not just the absolute bare minimum you can get away with. You have to have enough in there to allow for the irregular things which crop up, light bulbs. Most people don't buy light bulbs every month, but during the year you're going to need to buy 1 or 2. So you need the sort of small irregular things, and you also need some level of treats, unless you are literally on the I can't pay the rent, heat the house and feed the kids. That's a rather different problem. But if you're just trying to cut back, you need to allow yourself some level of treats. Otherwise you're just like to snap and say budgeting isn't for me.
I in something that I do, there's a principle that I employ. It's called the Pearl principle. Each letter stands for a particular action, like P's for postpone. And one of the things that sort of wraps that up is the L for love. And include within your budget, as you're talking about, things that you love. Yes, you might moderate it somewhat, but no plan will ever succeed if you literally are just you've got nothing of things that you love. It's like you're just existing. Now I know there are people who are already in that position. I know that there are people in work poverty, and even people who are working, more than one job, maybe a couple of jobs, maybe 3 jobs, just to try and make ends meet. So I appreciate there are some who perhaps are living like that. But I just want to go back to something you said earlier about people, asking for advice. Because, as we say, the assumption is that, for example, the debt advice world, that's only for people in debt. But there may be times where people simply have got concerns, questions. They're going to make an important decision, and they may not be quite so sure. I mean, what would you say to those people who are going to make some of those important decisions, but are faced with some difficult challenges ahead,
So
where they might be able to get some advice?
yeah, so most people have got debts. It's really quite unusual to find any household that doesn't have
Yeah,
any debts at all. But we're really talking about when your sort of normal debts become problem debts.
yeah,
So, you bought a car on car finance, perhaps that is a slightly expensive way to buy a car, but you've got the car, it's running fine, you can manage the monthly payments. It's not really a problem debt. But what can be a problem debt is when you've seen debts just sort of steadily start increasing. So
yeah,
if you do a sort of regular monthly check on your finances and you're seeing that your credit cards aren't maxed out, but they
yeah,
seem to be going up every month, there
yeah,
may be a very good reason why you had to spend a lot in September, the kids needed new school uniform or whatever. But if every month you're coming up with a new very good reason why they're going up, you're still seeing a constant trend of those cards going up. And
yeah,
there, it's a good idea. You can talk to a debt advisor about what you can do before you get to the point where you literally can't pay the minimum payments.
mm,
Debt advisors quite like talking to people early on in the process.
yeah, yeah,
So Step Change, one of the big debt charities in Britain, says that on average people wait more than a year
yeah,
to actually
yeah,
contact them from the point where they kind of knew they had a problem.
yeah,
I'd say people start off thinking, oh, this isn't serious enough to go and talk to a debt advisor. And that goes on for a while, during which their debts probably get worse. And for some people, they then get to the point where they say, this is totally hopeless. Nobody can help me. So there's no point in talking to a debt advisor.
yeah,
So, they carry on muddling through and even then not talking to a debt advisor about a huge problem on the assumption that things are now so bad they can't be helped. So
yeah,
both of those are wrong. If you talk to somebody early on, then a debt advisor may have more nicer options for you to consider.
yeah,
But however late it is in the process, debt advice can normally help with just explaining what your options are,
yeah,
explaining the pros and cons of them. The debt advisor can never tell you what to do, but they can help you make the decision by giving you the information. So you don't rush in and do
yeah,
something which
yeah,
may
yeah,
not be in your best long-term
yeah.
interest.
Well, one of the things that I look at, and I know from so much research, and people can Google this, is the ability to make rational decisions when emotionally your emotions are high. So, for example, if somebody is facing high levels of anxiety because of money challenges, that is not a good time to make very crucial financial decisions, because you know that they're not able to actually embrace the sort of the rational, logical thinking process there. And so getting some advice would certainly be strongly recommended. And I'm glad you've said that, Sarah.
Yeah. So
I
a debt
also,
advisor can often, I say they can
yeah,
see the wood for the trees. You're
yes,
so busy trying to get through to the next month,
yeah, yeah,
but a debt advisor can see the bigger
yeah.
picture and let you decide what you want to do, not just kick the can down the road by borrowing a bit more to get through.
Yeah, and I'll come to borrowing in a moment, but I just wanted to say as well, is it's so easy when you're in that place of stress and anxiety around money to catastrophize. And I remember my own experience when I found myself indebted. My first thought was, am I going to lose my house? Now, where I'm at today, looking back, I'm thinking, why on earth did I think that? There's a long way to go before I was going to be in any position where my house was going to be challenged in any way. But it's interesting, isn't it? People don't know what they don't know until they're faced with something.
People are scared of people turning
Yeah,
up on their doorstep,
yeah,
having to go to court,
yeah,
bailiffs,
yeah,
losing their house. And in most situations, if you talk to a debt advisor, most of these are either not going to happen at all, even if you
yeah,
do nothing for a long while. But if you do something, most of them will never happen.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so if you think about, pretend you're a creditor and somebody owes you money. If the person won't talk to you, then you don't know if they're not paying you because they can't afford to pay or because they decided not to. And obviously, if you're a creditor, those are two completely different positions. I know almost all creditors in this country, particularly loans and credit cards, if you phone them up and say, I can't afford to pay this month's payment because my petrol's gone up, my energy bills have gone up, they know those are priority debts. They're going to be sympathetic. They're going to help you work out a repayment plan which you can afford. They're not going to send bailiffs around. They can't legally actually send bailiffs around until they've been to court already, but they're not going to take you straight to court because they know you can't pay. Taking you to court doesn't suddenly mean you can pay something. Creditors know that, particularly what I call the consumer credit sector. So credit cards, catalogues, overdrafts from your bank, loans. If you've got problems, talk to the creditor, ask them if they can stop adding charges, ask them if you can make lower payments. And if that is too, if the whole idea of that is just gives you too much anxiety and you can't cope with it, talk to somebody like Step Change or your local Citizens Advice, and they will help you negotiate with your creditors and offer an amount you can afford.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Just if I may pick up on the loan side a moment, because I know we kind of in a little chat that we had, we sort of touched on that, because there's a lot of things happening out there, and you mentioned to me about the consolidation loans, and that can be quite an issue, and there's also these sort of salary linked loans that are being offered as well. What's your thoughts on those, and what's your concerns that people might be interested in?
Right, so those are two quite different things. Let's take the salary ones first. Not everybody's got this option, but some people at work, they've got a sort of link up where you can take a loan and then repay it from your salary. Often those are interest free and they're repaid the next month. So this is like a sort of an overdraft in a way. You're a bit short this month, you can take an extra £150 and you pay it back next month, which works fine if next month you can pay back, you can manage on your salary less £150. If you can't, you then end up taking another loan, perhaps a little bit bigger, and having the same problem. Even though they're not adding on interest, you've still got the problem that it makes your position next month worse than this month. So if it's a complete one-off, the car needed new tyres and there's nothing else wrong with your finances at all, sure, good idea. But if the problem is you can't, this month your electric and gas bill is too high and it's costing too much for food or to fill the car up, you're going to have exactly the same problems next month. So that loan from your salary hasn't actually helped you at all. It's kicked the can down the road, but it's made next month harder because now your income next month is less than it is now. So salary ones are great for one-off requests, not for cost of living, general, real can't afford to get through the month problems. You need proper debt advice for those now. Consolidation loans are a bit different. Consolidation loans, if you've got lots of credit card interest, say at 18, 25, 30% or more interest in some cases, you may think getting a loan at 15% is cheaper and a good solution to this. A loan at 15% interest is a pretty expensive loan. And you're going to have, and the repayments on that aren't flexible. So, the credit cards, you could just drop down to paying the minimum or pay more if you've had a good month. On a loan, you've got to make fairly large payments every month. So the problem is you can often pay the loan back and leave you a bit tight. So you use your credit card again, the one that you cleared with the consolidation loan. And this is just a one-off, then well, you don't clear the credit card, so then you pay interest on that, and then you put a bit of Christmas on the credit card. 6 to 12 months, we debt advisors will often see people who've taken out a large consolidation loan, who then use the credit cards again afterwards, and who are now in a worse position because they've got high credit card bills and the large loans to pay.
Yeah.
So expensive consolidation loans are very often a trap that actually paying them makes you more likely to use the credit cards again. So that's one sort of problem with consolidation loans. The other sort of, what about the cheap ones? What about a secured loan, which is only going to be at 7 or 8% interest? Isn't that a good idea? Well, it's putting your house at risk. That sounds like a sort of dramatic health warning, which everybody sort of tunes out. Before you take this loan, we have to warn you that it's putting your house at risk. And you think, I know, it's a secured loan. But seriously, what we're seeing at the moment is that mortgage rates are going up. When your current mortgage fix ends, your new mortgage is going to be more expensive than your current one is for almost everybody. And secured loan, consolidation loans are often variable rate. So if the bank puts its base rate up, the rate on that secured loan will go up. So you are taking a situation where a debt advisor could have helped you with that credit card debt. There are options for dealing with that credit card debt. As soon as you put it into a secured loan, you have to make those repayments or your house seriously is at risk. So you've taken, to try to buy yourself a little bit of breathing space and have a little bit easier months, you've actually made your financial position more risky overall. You might think it looks fine now, but 6 months' time, when inflation's carried on going up, when mortgage rates have gone up, you don't take a secured loan without first talking to a debt advisor and seeing what your other options are. Then you can make an informed decision.
I think it's almost like we brought it like full circle around back to don't be afraid to ask for help and don't be afraid to ask advice. You don't have to be in a serious position, indebted, for example, to ask advice. And oftentimes, if emotions are running high, you're feeling quite anxious about your money, it's actually better to get some of that advice before you make those crucial decisions. So thank you, Sarah, for that. I'm aware that time has passed us by. I would imagine, Sarah, that people listening to the podcast may have other thoughts and questions, and I know that neither of us are regulated to give debt advice, but if people want to ask any questions, where would be the best place for them to ask those questions?
Okay, so you can look at my website. So if you want to know about something specific, if you just Google debt camel and then what you want to know, debt camel consolidation loan, say. That would bring you up some posts that I've written about consolidation loans. You can read those. If you aren't sure about some of it, then you could ask a question in the comments below those posts. And there you don't have to put your full name in. You might not want your whole name being on the internet as having debt problems. So you can just put Phil in for your name. And then I'd see the question and I can answer it there. Or as I say, I'm on Twitter or Instagram as well. But I won't solve your particular debt problem, but I can give you good suggestions as to who you should talk to and what your options might be.
That's brilliant, Sarah. Thank you so much for your time. I've really appreciated it, enjoyed it, and I know things that you've shared and things we've talked about will be very much on the minds of many people in our nation at the moment. And so I'm sure there's been a lot of help in what we've said there. So thank you again, Sarah, for your time and coming on Wisdom Chat.
Thank you for inviting me, Phil.
It's a pleasure. You take care.